600 Hells Angels standing in silence on the front lawn of Crestwood Elementary School was not something the town of Delwood, Arkansas had ever seen before, especially not on a Tuesday morning in October, especially not for a 7-year-old girl most of them had never met, whose name they had only learned 48 hours earlier from a photograph of a napkin posted to a private message board at 2 in the morning by a man who couldn't sleep and couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen in a truck stop diner off Route 67. The drawing was still in his chest pocket when he arrived. Stick figure girl. 2 stick figure adults flanking her, one on each side, each one taller than she was. Round heads, triangle dresses on the women, the men with little circles for the wheels on their motorcycles, crayon, blue and red, and the particular desperate orange of a child who has run out of better colors and uses what she has. Underneath it, and the unsteady handwriting of a child who is still learning how letters work. 7 words that had not let Cody Briggs sleep in 2 days. Can you be my friends? I am lonely. He had not been able to throw it away. He had not been able to explain why. Not in any way that would have made sense to someone who hadn't been sitting alone in that diner at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night when a small hand appeared at the edge of his table and placed the folded napkin next to his coffee cup and was gone before he could turn around. He had unfolded it. He had read it. He had looked up. She was already back in the corner booth, 7 years old, sitting across from a woman who was not looking at her, who was looking at her phone with the flat, absorbed attention of someone who has decided the phone is more important than the table. The little girl was looking at Cody, waiting, with the particular patience of a child who has learned that waiting is what you do when you've asked for something and are not sure you deserve to receive it. He had looked at the napkin for a long time. Then he had looked around the diner, the truckers, the couple by the window, the waitress moving between the tables, and understood, in the way you understand things that have been true for a long time, before you notice them, that he was the only one in that room who had seen what just happened. That was 3 days ago. Now there were 600 of them, and the school board was about to open its Tuesday morning session. Delwood, Arkansas sits in the flat eastern part of the state where the land goes wide and the sky comes all the way down to meet it, and the towns are the kind of towns that have a grain elevator and a diner and a Dollar General and a school and not much else, and the people who live in them have been living in them for generations and know each other the way people know each other when there is no one else to know. It is not a hard place. Is it careful with what it has, careful with what it says, careful in the way that small communities are careful, which can look like kindness and can look like indifference, depending on which side of it you re-standing on. The diner on Route 67 was called Pam's, which was the name of the woman who had owned it for 31 years and who knew everyone in Delwood by their order. Coffee black, 2 sugars, the usual. Pam's diner ran on this kind of knowledge, and the knowledge was a form of love, even if nobody called it that. On Sunday nights, the place emptied out early. By 10:30, it was down to the diehards, the truckers overnighting at the lot next door, the occasional traveler, whoever had nowhere better to be. The jukebox had been broken since March, and nobody had fixed it, so the only sound most nights was the hiss of the griddle and the highway, and the low conversation of people who weren't saying much. Cody Briggs had pulled off Route 67 at 10:30 because he'd been riding since Texarkana, and his back was making its opinion known. He was 47 years old and built the way men get built when they have spent 3 decades doing physical work, heavy through the chest and shoulders, with the kind of hands that look like they have a history. His cut was Razorback chapter, Hells Angels, Fort Smith, 14 years. His road name was Briggs, which was also his last name, because road names have a way of being what you already are. He took the stool at the far end of the counter with his back to the wall, out of habit. He ordered coffee and a piece of whatever pie was left, which turned out to be cherry, which was fine. He had no plans beyond this stool and this coffee, and getting back on the road when the worst of his back had unknotted itself. He was not looking for anything. He never was on these nights. That was the thing about riding alone. It was the one time when not looking was allowed. The chapter, the obligations, the weight of being the person other people brought their problems to. None of that followed you onto the highway. The road asked nothing. The road just went. He was on his second cup when the small hand appeared at the edge of his vision. He turned. She was already gone. He looked down at the folded napkin on the counter beside his coffee. He unfolded it. He read it. He looked up and found her. Before I tell you who she was and what had been happening to her, if you're watching this right now, hit subscribe and drop your town in the comments below. I want to see where this story is going. City, state, country, anywhere on the map. I read every single one. Now, back to Delwood, back to Pam's diner on a Sunday night. Because the little girl in the corner booth had a name, and she had a story, and it is one that I have not been able to stop thinking about since the first time I heard it. Her name was Rosie Callum. She was 7 years old and small, even for 7, with dark eyes that were too serious for her face and brown hair cut straight across in a way that suggested someone had done it themselves without a mirror. She wore a sweater that was the right size and jeans that were too short, and one sock that had a small hole at the big toe that she had covered, with careful and entirely invisible strategy, with a Band-Aid from the school nurse's office 2 weeks ago. In her backpack, which sat on the booth seat beside her, she carried a library book about horses, a folder of homework that was always done, a pencil case with 4 crayons left in it, blue, red, orange, and a green so worn down it was barely usable, and a photograph of a woman with dark eyes like Rosie's who had been gone for 11 months and whose absence was the central fact of Rosie Callum's life, in the way that a missing wall is the central fact of a house. The woman's name was Carla Callum. She had been 29 years old and had worked the overnight shift at the poultry processing plant on the edge of town, and had come home in the morning smelling of cold and industrial soap, and had always been there when Rosie got up. That was the thing Rosie remembered most specifically. Not her face, not her voice, not the particular things she said, but the fact of her being there, the kitchen light on, the smell of coffee already made, the sound of someone moving in the next room that meant you were not the only person in the world. Carla Callum had died of a blood clot in her lung on a Thursday in November. She had felt unwell at work and had not said anything because she needed the hours, and had gone back to the line and had been found by a coworker during the break. She was 29 years old and she had a daughter, and she did not have a will because 29-year-olds do not think about wills, and Rosie had gone from one temporary placement to another in the 11 months since, carried by the current of a system that was not cruel but was very large and moved very slowly, and could not feel the particular weight of one small girl passing through it. She was currently living with her father's sister, a woman named Deb Maynard, who had agreed to the placement because the caseworker had asked her, and she was not the kind of person who said no when asked directly, but who had not, in the 11 months since, found a way to want Rosie in the particular active way that a child needs to be wanted. Deb was not unkind. She fed her and clothed her and drove her where she needed to go and showed up when she was required to show up. She had been required to show up at the school twice this fall. Both times she had not. The school, Crestwood Elementary, had sent 2 notices home in Rosie's folder about a situation that had been developing since September, a situation involving a group of girls in Rosie's 2nd grade class, and the particular social mechanics of 7-year-olds, which are not gentle, and which Rosie, who was quiet and new and did not yet know the rules of this particular ecosystem, had been navigating entirely alone. The notices said, "We would like to discuss Rosie's social adjustment and would appreciate a parent or guardian attending a brief meeting at your earliest convenience." The notices had sat in the folder. Deb had a lot going on. Rosie had watched them sit there. She had not said anything, because she had learned, in 11 months of placement and transition, and the particular silence of houses where you are present but not centered, that saying things about what was hard created a different kind of difficulty that was also hard. She had learned to be small. She had learned to be easy. She had learned to solve what she could solve with what she had, which was a library book and a pencil case with 4 crayons, and the particular patient ingenuity of a child who understands at the cellular level that the cavalry is probably not coming. She had drawn the napkin drawing at the table while Deb looked at her phone. She had folded it 4 times, very carefully. She had walked to the counter and placed it next to the coffee cup of the largest, most serious-looking person in the room. Then she had walked back and sat down and waited. The woman Cody Briggs had asked Pam about, quietly, while Rosie watched from the corner booth, was named Deb Maynard. Pam knew her. Pam knew everyone. "She's got the little Callum girl," Pam said, keeping her voice low in the way of women who know how to share information without making it a spectacle. "Carla's daughter. You remember Carla, overnight shift at the plant. Gone last November." She set the coffee pot down. That child has had a time of it. What kind of time? Cody said. Pam looked at him. The school's been trying to get the aunt in for 2 months, she said. Something's going on with the other kids. You know how kids can be. She paused. Rosie doesn't say much. Never did. Even before. But she comes in here sometimes with Deb on Sunday nights. She sits there, watching everybody, like she's trying to figure out where she fits. Cody looked at the napkin in his hand. Can you be my friends? I am lonely. He thought about all the places that sentence could have gone, all the people in that diner who could have gotten a folded napkin and unfolded it and read it and decided they had somewhere to be. He thought about the 7-year-old calculus that had chosen him specifically, the largest person, the most serious looking, the one who perhaps seemed like someone who could do something. He thought about whether that calculus was right. He looked at the corner booth. Rosie was still watching him. He held up the napkin so she could see it. He nodded. She looked at him for a moment, checking the way children check when they have been disappointed before. And then she nodded back, small and precise, and looked down at her library book. Cody Briggs paid his bill. He folded the napkin into his chest pocket. He went out to his bike and sat in the parking lot for a long time, looking at Route 67 and the flat Arkansas dark, and thinking about a 7-year-old girl sitting in a diner with 4 crayons and a question she didn't to know how to ask out loud. He took out his phone. He called his chapter president. He said, I need to tell you about something. His chapter president, a man named Vic Dolan, who had been running the Razorback chapter for 11 years and who was not, as a rule, surprised by much, said, Talk. Cody talked. When he was done, Vic was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Send me the picture. Cody photographed the napkin and sent it. He watched the 3 dots pulse. Then Vic said, I'm going to make some calls. The calls Vic Dolan made that night reached, by 2 in the morning, 11 chapter presidents across 5 states. By 4 in the morning, the photograph of the napkin, the stick figure girl, the 2 stick figure adults with their motorcycle wheels, the 7 words in crayon and unsteady handwriting, had moved through a network of private message boards, group chats that had no name and required no explanation, because the men in them had been connected long enough that a photograph like this did not require a speech. It required only that someone had seen it and thought the others should see it too. By 6 in the morning, Cody Briggs had received 47 messages asking for the name of the town and the name of the school. By noon on Monday, the number was 312. He had also received at 8:17 in the morning a call from a woman named Sandra Holloway, who identified herself as 2nd-grade teacher at Crestwood Elementary, and who said, in a voice that was working hard to stay level, that she had been trying to get someone to pay attention to Rosie Callum's situation for 2 months, and that she was very glad someone finally was. What's happening at the school? Cody asked. Sandra Holloway told him. It was not dramatic. It was not a single event. It was the accumulation of small, deniable things that 7-year-olds do to other 7-year-olds when the other 7-year-old is new and quiet and does not know the rules. The lunch table that rearranged itself when Rosie approached, the partner assignments that left her working alone, the birthday party invitations distributed openly in the classroom from which her name was visibly absent, the things that adults called social dynamics and children working things out, and she'll find her footing, and which were, in aggregate, and for a child who had already lost the one person who had made the world make sense, something closer to a daily confirmation that she did not belong anywhere. Sandra Holloway had sent 2 notices home. Both had gone unanswered. She had called the main office. The main office had noted the concern and said a caseworker would follow up. The caseworker had a caseload of 47 children and had noted the flag and had not yet had occasion to action it. And the principal? Cody asked. A pause. Principal Marsh has a policy, Sandra Holloway said carefully, of allowing social situations to resolve organically before intervening. He believes that structured adult involvement in peer dynamics can create dependency. Cody held the phone. So he's done nothing, he said. He is aware of the situation, Sandra Holloway said. Has anyone spoken to the children who are excluding her? Not formally. Has anyone spoken to their parents? Not yet. Has anyone sat with Rosie and told her that the adults in that building know what's happening and are going to fix it? The pause this time was longer. She's a very quiet child, Sandra said. She doesn't really tell us what she needs. Cody thought about a 7-year-old girl with 4 crayons and a napkin, and the particular desperate courage of a child who has decided that the formal channels have failed and she is going to have to solve this herself. She told someone, he said. She just told the wrong building. He arrived at Crestwood Elementary at 7:45 Tuesday morning. He had called ahead. He had spoken to the school secretary and explained, in the measured and entirely reasonable voice he used when he needed people to understand, that he was not a problem, but he was also not going away, that he was requesting a meeting with Principal Marsh before the start of the school day. The school secretary had said she would pass the message along. Principal Marsh had not called back. Cody Briggs parked his bike in the visitor lot and walked to the front entrance and pressed the buzzer. The door opened. The woman at the reception desk looked at him, the cut, the patches, the size of him, and recalibrated with the visible effort of someone trying to be professional. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Principal Marsh," he said. "I spoke with your office yesterday." He's in a meeting right now." "I'll wait," Cody said. He sat in the plastic chair in the reception area with his hands on his knees and looked at the construction paper artwork on the walls. Suns with crayon rays, hand-traced turkeys left over from a September display, self-portraits in which children had drawn themselves with the earnest imprecision of people who are not yet self-conscious about how they see themselves. He found Rosie's. It was in the bottom row near the window. Her name was written underneath in the same unsteady handwriting as the napkin. In her self-portrait, she had given herself brown eyes and a straight-line mouth, not a smile, not a frown, a straight line, and she had drawn herself smaller than the paper required, as if she had started in the center and then moved herself to the edge, so there would be room for something else. There was nothing else in the picture, just Rosie, small at the edge, the mouth like a straight line. Cody looked at it for a long time. Principal Marsh appeared at 8:15, moving through the reception area with the particular velocity of a man who is hoping to cross a space before being stopped. He was 51 years old in a sport coat and khakis, with the smooth, untroubled face of someone who has administered a school for 12 years without anything going badly enough to mark him. He saw Cody. He stopped. "Miss Briggs," Cody said. He stood. "I appreciate you taking the time. I understand you had some concerns about a student," Marsh said, with the practiced warmth of a man who has managed many parent meetings and knows how to make concerns sound like the beginning of a process that will be thorough and result in nothing. "About Rosie Callum," Cody said. "Yes, and you are someone who met her Sunday night and would like to understand why the adults in this building have been aware of her situation for 2 months and done nothing about it." The warmth adjusted. "Our approach to peer social dynamics is not working," Cody said. "She made a drawing on a napkin and gave it to a stranger in a diner because she needed someone to hear her, and nobody in this building had heard her." He reached into his chest pocket and took out the napkin, still folded, and held it between 2 fingers. He did not give it to Marsh. "I'd like to talk about what's going to change, starting today." Marsh looked at the napkin. He looked at Cody. He looked at the reception desk, where the school secretary had stopped pretending to type. "Why don't we step into my office?" he said. They were in the office for 22 minutes. In the first 5, Marsh explained the organic resolution policy and the importance of not creating dependency and the limitations of what the school could formally compel in matters of peer social behavior. In the next 5, Cody explained, in the same patient and unmovable way he had explained things to people for 25 years, that a 7-year-old who had lost her mother 11 months ago and was living in a placement where her guardian did not attend school meeting was not by any reasonable standard in a position to navigate peer social dynamics without structured adult support, and that the absence of that support was not a policy, it was a failure, and it had a child's name on it. In the minute after that, he placed Sandra Holloway's phone number on the desk and said she had been trying to get someone to listen for 2 months and that she deserved to be in this conversation. In the minute after that, Marsh picked up the phone. Sandra Holloway was in the office in 4 minutes. She looked at Cody Briggs sitting across from the principal's desk, and she looked at the napkin drawing now open on the desk between them, and she said, "I am so glad you came." In the remaining 11 minutes, 3 things were agreed upon. A formal conversation with the parents of the children involved to happen that day, a meeting with Deb Maynard to be arranged through the caseworker to happen that week, and a daily check-in between Sandra Holloway and Rosie Callum to begin immediately, in which Rosie would be told explicitly and repeatedly that the adults in the building knew what was happening and were addressing it. Marsh signed his name to a written summary of these agreements. He did so with the careful cooperation of a man who has understood, in the last 22 minutes, that the alternative to cooperation is something he doesn't want to find out about. Engines. 600 of them, coming in from 3 directions at once, a sound that reached Delwood, Arkansas 20 minutes before the motorcycles were visible, a low rolling vibration that the older residents felt in their chests before they heard it, the kind of sound that moves through walls and windows and makes dogs go still. They came down Route 67 from the north and County Road 12 from the west, and the old highway from the south, converging on Crestwood Elementary, with the unhurried deliberateness of men who have coordinated this kind of thing before and do not require instructions once the direction is clear. They filled the front parking lot and the overflow lot and the grass along the front fence and the street. On both sides, 600 motorcycles arranging themselves with a precision that had nothing to do with order being imposed and everything to do with men who simply understood what the moment required. They were there when the school buses arrived. They were there when the teachers pulled into the lot. They were there already silent, engines off, men standing beside their bikes, when the front doors of Crestwood Elementary opened and the children began arriving. Cody Briggs stood at the front of them, at the edge of the walkway that led to the main entrance. He was not blocking the path. He was just standing there, the way you stand when you are the first person in a place and you are waiting for someone specific. He was waiting for Rosie Callum. She came off the second bus. She was wearing the same sweater as Sunday, with a different pair of jeans. Her backpack was over one shoulder. She came down the bus steps with the careful attention of a child who watches where she puts her feet and came around the front of the bus and stopped. She looked at the parking lot. 600 men standing beside 600 motorcycles in the flat October morning, in the particular complete silence of people who have decided that this moment requires nothing from them except their presence. She looked at Cody. He was holding the napkin. She looked at the napkin for a long moment. Her mouth, which in her self-portrait she had drawn as a straight line, did something it had not done in 11 months, which was to curve both corners at once. Not a big smile, not the performed happiness of a child who has been told to smile, but the involuntary, irreversible smile of a person who has been seen. She walked toward him. He crouched down so he was at her level. He held out the napkin. She took it. She looked at her own drawing. The stick figure girl, the stick figure adults with their motorcycle wheels, the orange and red and blue. "I made this for you," he said, the first time. "These ones," he gestured at the men behind him, "made something back. They wanted you to see it." She looked at the 600 men standing in the October light. "Are they my friends?" she asked. Cody Briggs looked at the parking lot. He looked at Vic Dolan, who was standing at the front of the column with his hands in his jacket pockets. Looking back, he looked at the 598 men behind Vic, who had ridden through the night from 5 states, because a photograph of a napkin had moved through a network of people who understood what it meant when someone asked for a friend and didn't know who else to ask. "Yeah," he said, "they are." Rosie looked at them for another moment. Then she said, "Can you tell them thank you?" He looked back at the column. He nodded once. 600 men nodded back. Deb Maynard attended every school meeting for the rest of the year. She was not a bad woman. She had agreed to something she had not understood, and had been doing her best with the equipment she had. What she had needed, the caseworker later said, was someone to be specific with her about what Rosie needed rather than what the system required. And once someone was specific, Deb had risen to it. By December, she had signed up for the school's family engagement program. By February, she had learned Rosie's library book schedule. By spring, she knew every girl in the second grade class by name. The children who had excluded Rosie at the lunch table were spoken to by their parents. 2 of them, on the following Wednesday, asked Rosie to sit with them. She did. By November, she had been to 1 birthday party and had been invited to another. Principal Marsh revised the school's peer support policy before the end of October. Sandra Holloway was named the lead on a new early intervention protocol. The revision was adopted by 3 other schools in the district the following year. Rosie Callum kept the napkin. She kept it in the zippered pocket of her backpack, folded in the same 4 folds she had made on Sunday night, before she walked to the counter and placed it beside a stranger's coffee cup and waited to see if anything would happen. Something had happened. On the last day of second grade, she made a new drawing. Same crayon, same napkin from Pam's, where Deb had started taking her for hot chocolate on Sunday nights because it turned out Rosie loved hot chocolate and Deb had not known that until she had asked. In the new drawing, there was a stick figure girl. She was in the center of the paper. She was surrounded by other figures, some with motorcycle wheels, some without. Every figure in the drawing was the same size as she was, not taller, not smaller, the same. Her mouth was a curve. She gave the drawing to Cody Briggs at a chapter run in May, standing on the running board of a pickup truck so she could reach his chest pocket, and folded it in and patted it, closed the way you pat something when you want to make sure it stays. He has kept it in that pocket since. He has never been the kind of man who talks about what things mean to him. But every person in the Razorback chapter knows which pocket he keeps his hand over when someone asks him why he rides. I think about Rosie Callum every time I see a child sitting somewhere, quiet, watching the room, wondering who she already decided to trust and what she is carrying in that backpack and whether the person she chose is going to look up. There are children in every town who have already made their drawing. They are waiting to see who unfolds it. If this story found you today, if you believe that one person paying attention can change everything, hit like and share it with someone who still knows how to look up from the table. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. And drop a comment below. Tell me about a time someone saw you when you needed it, or a time you were the one who looked up. I want to read it. Every single one.